Field Report 2, date 12/21. As I skulked about the Leviathan, it appeared as if Callus had granted me an audience. After speaking briefly with one of the Emperor's robotic clones, he had given me a gift, a small room in which I could conduct my studies and record my logs in peace. For the record, I am grateful for this. In my thoughts during my self-imposed exile, I find myself thinking about recent events. In particular, the discovery of Saint 14's body in the Infinite Forest on Mercury. I was brought back a little after his disappearance. I had never met the man in person, but what I do know is that he was a figure of nigh incorruptible character. A bulwark against the dark, against which all things would shatter. A beacon of hope. While other Guardians believed him to be rather odd, in particular concerning a belief that he had held, that belief being that a Guardian Savior would come, and it was this belief that gave him the strength to fight the Battle of Six Fronts ages ago. This belief, however, would prove to be true, as the Guardian who slayed the Blackguard's heart stands now as strong as he did in his own right, a slayer of gods and titans. However, it appears as if Saint and this same Guardian were a lot closer than anyone could have thought. In his final moments, Saint 14 recorded the following.
I never found Osiris, but have killed enough Vex to end a war, and they in turn struck a fatal blow. They completed a mind with the sole function to drain the light from me. It worked very well. Don't worry, not that you worry much. It took them centuries to build, key to the unique frequency of my light, and I sit atop its shattered husk. I mourn that I will never reach the heights that you have. To me, you represent everything a Guardian can become. Yours is a thriving city, so different from mine. My whole 14th life, I fought to make my city yours. I never finished. All I have left is this weapon. The Cryptarchs say you crafted it yourself, built it out of scraps and light and sheer will, inside the Infinite Forge. I'll make sure it finds its way back to you. When you gave it to me, I swore I would make it my duty to follow your example. I'm still trying.
This simple action, this one single detail puts so much of our history into perspective. The Guardian had effectively established a predestination paradox with the shotgun that Saint 14 wielded. A type of paradox that occurs when an individual from the future creates an event in the past that directly leads to them traveling back in time. How the weapon got there in the first place is unknown, but the weapon, as I hold but a copy in my hand, it carries such immense weight. I feel almost unworthy to load a shell into it at all. How strange is it? A legendary man looking up to a person who existed after he had already died. A figure whose heroism inspired Saint to be the man he was, and his heroism inspiring them. It would be a fair thing to say that that's where the story of Saint 14 begins, because as he says, I've spent my 14th life to make this city the one that we live in today. Perhaps this same vision of the future was one of the forces that drove Saint to help create the consensus and the Vanguard. He was elected as one of the first Vanguard commanders. If he fought feeling that a savior would come, and did everything in preparation for it, then the paradox is more embedded into our history than I previously estimated. Six Fronts was where Saint earned his glory and rightful place in our history. Brother Vance wrote in a book called The Definitive History of Osiris the following about this series of events. In the wake of the Iron Lord's untimely deaths, and the chaos that threatened to topple the fledgling city from within, the one known as the Speaker made his bid for power. To create the illusion of democracy, the Speaker established the Consensus, an oligarchical body of representatives from the city's leading political factions and the three Guardian classes. For the Titans, Saint 14, the right hand of the Speaker. Though this writing does appear to paint the establishment of the Vanguard and the Consensus in a very negative way, the Consensus does not appear to be an electoral body, as members of this council do not appear to be elected by the populace. Rather, they are appointed. Politics bore me rigid, but this fact is something that cannot be ignored. The man himself was a close ally, possibly a friend to Osiris, another legendary figure of that era, who remains alive to this current day, waging an unending war against the Vex in the Infinite Forest. It was this closeness that would lead to his eventual demise centuries later. After the Battle of Six Fronts and Saint's appointment to Vanguard Commander, he recommended that Osiris be made into the Vanguard for the Warlocks, a position that he took but never truly held, for reasons that I'll explain later. Osiris would disappear after these events, which leads us into the Battle of Twilight Gap and the Crusade of Saint 14. Twilight Gap was one of the most important times of the city, but Saint would take this to a whole new level. After the battle reached an ultimate conclusion, he was determined to bring retribution to the fallen who had assaulted the city, in particular, the Kell of Devils himself. In the battle's aftermath, he embarked on a crusade against the fallen. The exact details of this, including personnel involved and length of time it took, are not known. It could have easily just been Saint 14 and his ghost, or a group of guardians with him. We don't know. What is known, however, is that in his battle with the Kell, it was just the Kell and him. The battle was lengthy, and Saint had nearly exhausted all of his light. Gathering all of it into his head, he embedded the razor-sharp plume of his helmet into the Kell's skull, killing him. In the aftermath of slaying the Devil Kell, Saint 14 contacted the Speaker, a man who he had seen as his father figure. After reporting the death of the Kell, the Speaker told his son that Osiris had returned to his dabblings with the Vex. Saint had come to a conclusion in his own mind. To protect the last city of Earth, Osiris must be stopped, no matter the cost. The conversation between the Speaker and Saint went as follows. No, not this time. I have word that Osiris was seen on Mercury, the Caloris Basin. He's turned his mind back to the Vex. Mercury? Too many channels to know. You activate one, you start to feed its veins. He threatens our peace. Your duty, my son. You must never forget. I cannot. The ghost killed the feed and waited for its guardian's words. Ghost, prepare my Vex arsenal and plot a course for Mercury. That old man is about to wake up hell. While it cannot be said for certain as to what would have happened if Saint 14 had found Osiris in the Infinite Forest, there is a certain tragedy to it. Osiris was Saint's adopted brother, and by that I mean they called each other brother eons ago. But it was here on the battlefield, standing over the grave of the fallen Kell, that Saint made up his mind. He plotted a course for Mercury to confront his brother, an action that would lead to his demise on the barren, Vex-ridden rock. Upon entering the Infinite Forest, Saint started his search for his brother. Saint was immensely strong and had killed thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of Vex during his time there. However, as the days turned to weeks, turned to months, the Vex were plotting to defeat him finally, constantly calculating a formula to finally bring the Titan to his knees. The Vex, while they normally are not able to create simulations involving light and darkness because of their paracausal nature, they do appear to be able to generate a reasonably similar substitute. This substitute was enough to mortally wound Saint. However, the Titans still destroyed the mind that calculated it. Imagine that. Destroying a creature that was constructed to destroy you and everything you are. While the prospect of the Vex making a mind that could drain the light of Guardians is rather unsettling, according to Saint's final message to the Guardian, the process takes centuries to complete. In a final recording before his death, he speaks about his intentions with the recommendation for Osiris to be placed as a Vanguard commander. The log itself is a letter that is meant for multiple recipients. It opens with Osiris, then moves to the speaker, then to his inspiration, the Guardian. Each piece talking to the individuals. It's a shame that his father died before he got the chance to read it. To his brother, he wrote the following. My recommendation to install you as Vanguard Commander was not a gesture to stroke your ego. It was an order to stay and help the city achieve all it could. An order you refused to follow. News of my demise will no doubt reach you late. I can already see your response. The guilt that will follow, however fleeting. I thought you had changed after 6 fronts. That seeing your people on the brink of destruction and spared from death would be enough to reward you to stay. To fight. I'll fight in your stead one last time. Though Saint came for the demise or potential reconversion of Osiris, he couldn't find him in the infinite. Osiris expressed to the Guardian his still existent guilt. If Saint is lost in the infinite forest, it is because he came here to find us, he said. You can't blame yourself for every missing Guardian, Osiris, Segura would respond. For him, I can. In the same few conversations, Osiris expressed a desire to find his brother again. Though by the time that they had found him, it had been centuries too late. Saint had perished, and left the shotgun gifted to him by the Guardian for the Guardian to use on their own. What's so strange about this fact is that there was a memorial that was built for him by the Vex. Perhaps the Vex had learned to respect or potentially fear him. They gave him a tomb and surrounded his body with mounds of molten Vex corpses, a testament to how many had fallen before him before he had finally buckled. When Saint didn't return, the city mourned and held a legendary vigil for their greatest hero, and a song of praise was made, as it would have been for the heroes of old Earth. He walked out into the demon light, but at the end, he was brighter. Was there ever another Guardian so beloved by the people? This is where the tale of Saint 14 abruptly ends. Though his final deed was ensuring that the Guardian received the shotgun he had used through the years. This gun, however, to ensure the paradox is preserved, must return to him. How and when that must be done remains to be seen. For now, I will remain here, reflecting on his passing and my own mortality. Eric Vitez, signing off.